Order. Before I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer, it may be for the convenience of honourable members if I remind them that at the end of the Chancellor's speech, copies of the budget resolutions will be available to members in the vote office. Mr. Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the budget that I lay before the House today represents more than simply an allocation of resources and an accounting of revenues, because behind the numbers and the statistics, the central purpose of this budget is to ensure that Britain is equipped to rise to the challenge of the new and fast-changing global economy. Not just a few of us, but every one of us. Now, the impact of the global market in goods and services and of rapidly advancing technology is now being felt in every home and in every community of our country. New products, new services, new opportunities challenge us to change. Old skills, old jobs, old industries have gone and will never return. Yet for our country, the first industrial nation, this new global economy, driven by skills, creativity and adaptability, offers a historic opportunity. The dynamic economies of the future will be those that unlock the talent of all their people. And our creativity, our adaptability, our belief as a nation in hard work and self-improvement, the very qualities that made Britain lead the world in the 18th and 19th centuries, are precisely the qualities we need to make Britain a strong economic power in the 21st century. But to achieve this, we must address the four weaknesses that have held us back for too long and for too many years: instability, underinvestment, unemployment, and the waste of talent. And in this budget, I will address each of these weaknesses in turn to ensure stability, investment, work, and opportunity for all. I turn first to stability, because without stability, all plans for investment, employment, and education founder. In a global economy, long-term investment will come to those countries that demonstrate stability in their monetary and fiscal policies and in their trading relationships. And for Britain, this means a commitment to stability in our relationships with Europe. In May, the government established a wholly new framework for monetary stability, open and accountable, based on clearly established rules and discipline, the government setting the inflation target, the Bank of England setting interest rates to meet that target. This reform signified our determination to break from the short-termism of the past and to establish long-term confidence. In this budget, I will match these measures for long-term monetary stability with measures to promote long-term fiscal stability. The Chancellor is first and foremost the guardian of the public finances, the people's money. But during the 1990s, the national debt has doubled, and this year alone, the taxpayer will pay out debt interest payments of £25 billion, more on debt than we spend on schools. Public finances must be sustainable over the long term. If they are not, then it is the poor, the elderly, and those on fixed incomes who depend most on public services that will suffer most. So, as with our approach to monetary policy, so in fiscal policy, we will now establish clear rules, a new discipline, openness, and accountability. My first rule, the golden rule, ensures that over the economic cycle, the government will borrow only to invest and that current spending will be met from taxation. My second rule is that as a proportion of national income, public debt will be held at a prudent and stable level over the economic cycle. And to implement these rules, I am announcing today a 5-year deficit reduction plan. These rules and this plan will ensure a historic break from the short-termism and the expediency that have characterized the recent fiscal policies of our country. Now, as with our monetary policy, our fiscal policy will be all the more credible for being open and accountable. Immediately on coming to office, the government invited independent scrutiny by the National Audit Office of key assumptions in the public finance forecast. This independent scrutiny will continue into future budgets with further work by the National Audit Office and with publication some months in advance of every budget, an assessment for open debate in the country of what is happening to the economy and to the people's money. My budget today sets out a forecast for public borrowing this year and next year, and for the following 3 years, projections for the public finances based on different scenarios for the growth of public spending. And I can report that in each and every case, our deficit reduction plan ensures that we are on course to meet the 2 fiscal rules that will guide our approach to the public finances. Now, any budget seeking to achieve high and stable levels of growth and employment must be guided by the true state of the public finances, but also by a clear assessment of the state of the economy. And it's to that I will now turn. We have seen a rapid growth of consumer spending of nearly 4% over the last year. With the prospect of further windfalls from the building societies, consumer spending is likely to remain strong. There has been a sharp rise of 7 to 11% in house prices, with even higher rises in the South East. The growth of average earnings has accelerated to 4.5% a year. The rate of broad money growth has been around 10% for a year. These increases in consumer spending, earnings and money supply are continuing even as industrial production and manufacturing output have been recovering only slowly. It is essential that consumer spending is underpinned by investment and industrial growth. Britain cannot afford a recurrence of the all-too-familiar pattern of previous recoveries. Accelerating consumer spending and borrowing, side by side with skill shortages, capacity constraints, increased imports, and rising inflation. Already there are warning signs that this pattern could be repeated. In similar circumstances, some of my predecessors have ignored these signs, while others have deluded themselves into believing that growth, however unbalanced, was evidence of their success. I will not ignore the warning signs, and I will not repeat past mistakes. The Treasury's assessment is that the output gap is close to zero, and there is a risk that output could already be above trend. In other words, our sustainable rate of growth is too low for growth to continue at its current pace without the risk of more inflation. That is why in May I judged interest rate increases were necessary, and events since then have confirmed that this was the correct judgment. But against these pressures, we must take into account both the subdued level of producer price inflation and the current strength of sterling, which over the last year has appreciated by 18%. I understand and I share the concerns of industry and exporters, and I will address them. As the figures demonstrate, there is now an imbalance between strong growth in the consumer and service sector and weak growth in the manufacturing and exporting sector. Nevertheless, what worries manufacturers even more is that inflation could get out of control and herald a return to the instability of stop-go. My goal, therefore, is to ease inflationary pressures without damage to industrial and exporting prospects, and to do so in a way that is consistent with our long-term objective of high and stable growth and employment. In this way, we can moderate the upward pressure on interest rates and on the exchange rate, as well as further our objective of sustainable public finances. I have therefore decided to tighten fiscal policy as a result of budget measures, including the windfall tax, by £5.5 billion this year and £4.75 billion next year. And with the resulting reductions in the deficit, I am able to present an economic forecast, putting us back on course for a more balanced and more lasting recovery, and for long-term stability in the public finances. The forecast is that national income will grow by 3.25% this year and 2.5% next year before returning to its trend rate. Consumer spending, which is now expected to increase by 4.5% this year, is now forecast to grow more slowly at 4% next year. Business investment, which has failed to meet expectations over the past 2 years, is forecast to rise strongly this year and next, so increasing investment share of our national income. Finally, inflation is expected to remain at 2.5% this year, the government's target, rising slightly to 2.75% next year as a result of the failure by the last government to take early action to control inflation before returning to 2.5% in 1999. To achieve long-term stability is to achieve something no government has done for decades. But stability is a necessary, not a sufficient condition of the government's objectives of high and stable levels of growth and employment. A prudent estimate of the current trend rate of growth is only 2.25%. So raising the long-term growth rate of our economy is our major challenge. And that is why the announcements that follow represent a new kind of budget for higher growth, one whose main priorities are to invest for the long term, particularly in skills, to modernize the welfare state, and to maximize opportunity for all, the modern route to economic success. While previous budgets used to be about dividing up today's wealth, this and future budgets will concentrate on laying the foundations for tomorrow's wealth. And it's to far-reaching measures that will raise the quantity and quality of investment that I will now turn. Since 1980, the United Kingdom has invested a lower share of national income than most other industrialised countries, and national income per worker has been lower too. For every £100 invested per worker in the United Kingdom, Germany has invested over £140, the United States and France around £150, and Japan over £160. Now, the objective behind our 2-year-long corporate tax review, begun in opposition, has been to develop a tax system that encourages personal savings, favours higher levels of investment, rewards long-term investment, and is fair to all. Our consultations on capital gains tax will be completed in time for the next budget. Half the adult population of our country hardly saves at all. So in order to encourage personal savings, the government will, as promised, introduce from 1999 individual savings accounts, extending the principle of TESAs and PEPs, continuing to offer favourable tax reliefs for saving. Through the individual savings account, we intend to encourage the habit of saving among people who have never saved before. I can confirm also that this budget will not proceed with the last government's proposal to phase out tax relief on employee pension contributions. This point in the recovery is, however, the right time to make changes in corporation tax to encourage more long-term investment. My changes in monetary policy were designed to help companies make long-term investment decisions with confidence. The changes in corporation tax are directed to the same long-term objective. I want the United Kingdom to be the obvious first choice for new investment. So I have decided to cut the rate of corporation tax by 2%, from 33% to 31%, the lowest ever rate in the United Kingdom. This means that we will have the lowest corporation tax rate of any of our major competitors, Germany, France, America or Japan, and we will have it under a Labour government. This is a long-term commitment that will increase both inward investment and domestic investment to the benefit of the whole country. Too often, British companies have invested too late and too little in the economic cycle. Because I want companies to get the benefit now, the 2% corporation tax cut will apply from April 1997. This tax cut is the first component of this budget's investment strategy. The second is a structural reform that will also encourage investment. The present system of tax credits encourages companies to pay out dividends rather than reinvest their profits. This cannot be the best way of encouraging investment for the long term. And this was acknowledged by the last government. Many pension funds are in substantial surplus, and at present many companies are enjoying pension holidays. So this is the right time to undertake a long-needed reform. The last government cut tax credits paid to funds and companies. With immediate effect, I propose to abolish tax credits paid to pension funds and companies. And in all the consequential changes I will make, I have been and I will be fair. For PEP holders, for individuals who do not pay tax, and for charities, tax credits will continue to be paid until April 1999. By this time, the introduction of the individual savings account will ensure that individuals have the opportunity to continue to be able to save with tax advantages. So they will continue to have favourable tax incentives to invest in equities. Basic and lower rate taxpayers do not pay any extra tax on dividends they receive, and that will remain the position. And we will ensure that higher rate taxpayers will pay no more than they do now on their dividends. Advanced corporation tax will continue to be paid by companies on their dividends at the same rate as now. And to stop the yield from ACT being eroded by greater use of foreign income dividends, we are ending the foreign income dividend scheme from 6 April 1999. International holding companies will continue to pay dividends out of foreign income without paying advanced corporation tax. I will make special provision for charities through public expenditure. Tax credits will be paid to them until April 1999, and after April 1999, the government will fund a 5-year transitional period. So charities will have 7 years in total in which to adjust to the change. Charities have themselves been pressing for a review of their tax treatment for some time. The government will now consult widely on how the tax treatment of charities can be made more appropriate to help charities today. Charities too will of course gain, like others, from the longer-term benefit to their shareholdings that higher company investment and profits will bring. In future, Mr. Deputy Speaker, new jobs are likely to come from a large number of small businesses than from a small number of large businesses. And the route to success here is not for the government to try to pick winners, but to create an environment in which more firms have more chances by their own efforts to succeed. That is why I have decided to do more to assist investment in small business. I have therefore decided to cut the small companies' tax rate by 2% from 23% to 21%, and to do so from April 1997. Now, in the past, investment incentives have been introduced in recessions when companies are least able to consider new investment. But at this point in the economic cycle, an investment incentive should encourage companies considering future investments to bring these investments forward. I have therefore decided with immediate effect to double for 1 year the level of first-year capital allowances on plant and machinery for small and medium-sized firms. This will apply to both companies and unincorporated businesses. And this means that if a firm invests within the next 12 months, it can set off against tax not a quarter of its investment as hitherto, but a half. over 3.5 million businesses will be eligible for this relief. It will be worth 230 million to small and medium-sized businesses next year and 170 million the year after. It will be largely paid for by reinstating the one-year carryback time for corporate losses, which was temporarily extended to 3 years during the recession. Now, taken together, the cut in corporation tax and the new investment incentive represent a very significant boost for small business investment. Britain now moves forward with one of the most favourable tax regimes for small businesses of any country. This government will support the small businesses of Britain. Britain is increasingly leading the world in those industries which most obviously depend on the skills and talents of their workers. Industries like communications, design, architecture, fashion, music and film. Our National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts will offer talented young artists and scientists the finance to turn British ideas into successful business ventures. But despite the film industry's outstanding record of creative and critical success, too many British films that could be made in Britain are being made abroad or not at all. The talents of British filmmakers can and should, wherever possible, be employed to the benefit of the British economy. So after today, production and acquisition costs on British films with budgets of 15 million or less will qualify for 100% write-off for tax purposes when the film is completed. This is a 3-year measure at a cost of £30 million that should not only boost the number of British films, but boost the British economy by increasing our exports. In the new economy, where capital inventions, even raw materials, are mobile, Britain has only one truly national resource. It is the talent and potential of its people. Yet in Britain today, 1 in 5 of working-age households has no one earning a wage. In place of welfare, there should be work. So today, this budget is taking the first steps to create the new welfare state for the 21st century. The welfare state was and remains a great British achievement. It was set up to provide security for all and opportunity for all, goals that are as relevant today as they were in 1945. But for millions out of work or suffering poverty in work, the welfare state today denies rather than provides opportunity. So it is time for the welfare state to put opportunity back into people's hands. First, everyone in need of work should have the opportunity to work. Secondly, we must ensure that work pays. And thirdly, everyone who seeks to advance through employment and education must be given the means to advance. So we will create a new ladder of opportunity that will allow the many, by their own efforts, to benefit from opportunities once open only to a few. Starting from next year, every young person aged 18 to 25 who is unemployed for more than 6 months will be offered a first step on the employment ladder. Tomorrow, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education and Employment, will detail the 4 options, all involving training leading to qualifications. A job with an employer, work with a voluntary organisation, work on the environmental task force, and for those without basic qualifications, the chance of full-time education or training. With these new opportunities for young people come new responsibilities. There will be no 5th option to stay at home on full benefit. So when they sign on for benefit, they will be signing up for work. Benefits will be cut if young people refuse to take up the opportunities. This new deal for the young is comprehensive, it is rich in opportunity, it is linked to the development of skills, and it has already attracted the support of some of Britain's leading companies. I urge every business to play its part in this national crusade to equip this country for the future by taking on young unemployed men and women. I would appeal to every voluntary organisation to make a further contribution to the work they do in the community by taking on a young person. And I will make it possible for every member of this House, on all sides of this House, to act as an ambassador for this venture, encouraging young people in their constituencies, consulting with local businesses, and bringing them together to play their part in this new deal for young people. There are 350,000 adults who have been out of work for 2 years or longer. So the second component of our Welfare to Work programme will offer employers a £70 a week, £75 a week subsidy to employ long-term unemployed men and women. Many of these unemployed who lack skills are debarred by the 16-hour rule from obtaining them. For this group, the unskilled, the 16-hour rule will now be relaxed. So that when the long-term unemployed sign on for benefit, they will now sign up for work or for training. This programme, £3.5 billion, which includes an unallocated reserve of £500 million, will provide money over a full Parliament. It will be the main item funded from the windfall tax on the excess profits of the privatised utilities, the details of which I will give the House shortly. But in this budget, I will address also the needs of two other important groups in our society: lone parents and those in receipt of incapacity and disability benefits, who as a matter of principle should have the right to work. There are now 1 million lone parents, bringing up 2 million children on benefit. Any welfare to work programme that seriously tackles poverty in our country must put new employment opportunities in the hands of lone parents. So today I'm allocating a total of £200 million from the Windfall Fund for the most innovative programme any government has introduced for advice, training and day and after school childcare to support lone parents. Currently, lone parents receive little encouragement to seek work before their youngest child is 16. Under the programme I'm announcing today, when the youngest child is in the second term of full-time schooling, lone parents will be invited for job search interviews and offered help in finding work that suits their circumstances. On Friday, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Social Security, will explain to the House the full details of how this new radical programme will be introduced. A generation of parents have waited for the government to introduce a national childcare strategy. From this budget forwards, childcare will no longer be seen as an afterthought or a fringe element of social policies, but from now on, as it should be, an integral part of our economic policy. So we will first increase the supply of childcare in our country, and we will make it more accessible. As part of the New Deal for young people, we will encourage voluntary organisations to take on and to train young people and help them into careers as childcare assistants. We believe that over a 5-year period, as many as 50,000 young people can be trained as childcare assistants. We will make childcare more affordable as well. From next summer, every lone parent with more than one child who qualifies for family credit, housing benefit or council tax benefit will have the first £100 of weekly childcare costs disregarded in calculating their in-work benefits. And every lone parent on family credit with children of 12 years or younger will be able to receive help. Lottery money will be available for after-school clubs, and as we replace the wasteful and chaotic system of nursery vouchers, we will be able to offer reliable access to nursery places for every 4-year-old in Britain. So with these measures that bring both childcare and employment within the reach of many more parents, we have taken the first step to a national childcare strategy for the United Kingdom. No one in our society in 1997 should be excluded from the right to work. either because of disability or incapacity, if they want to do some work. So a final element of our welfare to work strategy, we will bring forward proposals to help those who are disabled or on incapacity benefit who want training or work. And to fund this programme and other measures, I've set aside £200 million from the Windfall Fund. Now, taken together, these comprehensive and ambitious initiatives means that from now on, no section of society and no one should suffer permanent exclusion. For too long, the United Kingdom has been united only in name. From today, ours is a country where everyone has a contribution to make. The second principle of the new welfare state is to ensure that work always pays. In May, I established, under the chairmanship of Martin Taylor, a review to consider how we can streamline and modernise the tax and benefit system to help employment opportunity and work incentives and to assist in strengthening family life. We will introduce a 10p rate of income tax as soon as it is prudent to do so. A 10p tax rate, combined with a cut in benefit tapers, will reduce in-work poverty, as too will the minimum wage, which the government will introduce after advice from the new Low Pay Commission. Set at a sensible level, the minimum wage will not only establish a floor under wages, but ensure in-work benefits act as a genuine top-up for low-paid workers rather than a subsidy for low-paying employers. So I have also asked Martin Taylor to consider at an early stage the advantages of introducing a new in-work tax credit for low-paid workers. It would draw on the successful experience of the American Earned Income Tax Credit, which helps reduce in-work poverty and now helps 19 million lower-paid workers in America. Conclusions that emerge from this tax benefit review will inform the judgments in my next budget, which I have decided will be in the spring of 1998. The third component of the new welfare state is the establishment of a skills ladder, so that every employee is encouraged to learn skills through their working lives. It is our intention to introduce individual learning accounts, and to increase the staying-on rates at school and colleges, we'll complete our review of educational finance and maintenance for 16 to 18-year-olds to ensure that resources are used to support those most in need. And just as the Open University since the 1960s has offered second chances in higher education through television to people in their homes, the new University of Industry that we propose can, from the 1990s onwards, through satellite, cable and interactive technologies, bring lifelong learning direct to millions in their homes as well as workplaces. I have therefore allocated from the Welfare to Work budget £5 million to start up the public-private partnership that will fund the new University for Industry. So by these measures, which will create work, make sure that work always pays, and provide recurring opportunities for lifelong learning, the new welfare state will help equip Britain for the modern world. Mr. Deputy Speaker, a country equipped for the future should also have a modern tax system based on principle. The tax system sends critical signals about the economic activities a society wishes to promote and to deter. Today, I start to put these principles into practice by demonstrating our commitment to the environment. As the Statement of Environmental Principles set out by my honourable friend, the Financial Secretary, which is published today, shows, we are determined that our tax system and economic policies as a whole encourage the good and discourage the harmful. The extraction of aggregates, including stone, sand and gravel, involve significant environmental costs and damage to the landscape, which may go beyond that recognised in the scope and level of the landfill tax. Too little is also being done to discourage water pollution. The environmental case for charges on polluters needs to be examined carefully as well. And after a period of consultation, I will return with any proposals in these two areas for my next budget. Existing taxes, including our excise duties, must also advance the government's environmental objectives. So to reduce pollution, lorries and buses that meet low emission standards will from next year attract a reduction of vehicle excise duty by a maximum of £500. Rises in vehicle excise duty, broadly in line with inflation, will take place from 17th November. And in line with the environmental objectives I have set down, road fuel duties will increase by an extra 1% every year over and above the annual 5% real rate of increase established by the previous government. So petrol will go up by the equivalent of 4 pence a litre from 6 o'clock this evening. I've also decided to raise the annual rate of increase in tobacco duties. From 1st December this year, these will be increased by an extra 2% a year, this year by another 5 pence above the annual 3% real rate of increase established by the previous government. In the normal course of events, the price of a packet of 20 cigarettes would have risen by over 14 pence. Under my proposals, the price of a packet will rise on 1st December by 19 pence. Alcohol and tobacco duties demand careful consideration this year, not least because of the impact of fraud, smuggling and cross-border shopping. I have therefore decided to review all alcohol duties and tobacco duties. While this review is underway, inflation-only rises for alcohol will take effect from January. The tax burden avoided by the few falls on the many. And so in 8 weeks of this government, we have already identified a series of significant tax abuses. I'm introducing measures with immediate effect to end tax abuses through avoidance of corporation tax, VAT, or pay as you earn. Changes to insurance premium tax to block an abuse relating to long-term health insurance will take effect from 1st October. I am also proposing to modernise the rules governing transfer pricing and controlled foreign companies. The details of these changes will be available at the end of my speech. And in total, these initial measures to tackle tax avoidance will bring in a cumulative total of £1.7 billion over 4 years. A government committed to the proper funding of public services will not tolerate the avoidance of taxation, and we will be relentless in our war against tax avoidance. So I have instructed the Inland Revenue to carry out a wide-ranging review of areas of tax avoidance with a view to further legislation in future finance bills. And I have specifically asked them to consider a general anti-avoidance rule. The principle of fairness in taxation will guide all my budget decisions. So I can today announce that at this, the first opportunity, the government will honour its pledge to cut VAT on fuel and power. To help pay for this, we will withdraw the relief for private medical insurance for the over 60s. It costs £140 million a year, and it has failed to achieve its original purpose of substantially increasing the take-up of private medical insurance. I would like to abolish VAT on fuel, but European rules prevent me from doing so. Therefore, VAT will be cut to the lowest level compatible with European law, that is 5%, from 1st September, well in advance of winter fuel bills. I come to other taxes. In this budget, I have no changes to make to income tax either at the basic or the top rate. I will not extend VAT to children's clothes, food, books, newspapers or public transport fare. Nor will I during this Parliament. this is a government that keeps its promises on tax. To cut fuel bills further, I intend to make a further tax cut. The gas levy imposed by the last government has pushed prices for domestic consumers higher than they would otherwise be. So from next April, we are reducing the gas levy to zero. 18.5 million domestic customers will benefit from this change. Their gas bills should fall by about 2% on average, and as a result of these two changes, including reduction in VAT on fuel and other price cuts, I expect gas prices to fall in real terms by 5.5% this year, 11% next year, which will mean a fall of £90 in next year's fuel bills compared with last year. Many of the least well-insulated houses in Britain are occupied by older people. No pensioner should be in a position where, for reasons of finance, they cannot adequately insulate their homes. And today, with our new programme of training and jobs for young people, we are able to expand the national programme of home insulation. Contractors within the Home Energy Efficiency Scheme and voluntary organisations will be encouraged to take on young people to insulate the homes of pensioners. This will give jobs and skills to our young people. It will help and protect our elderly. It will improve our environment, and it will tackle fuel poverty. Poorly insulated housing is but one of the most conspicuous failures of housing policies over the last 20 years. Even more serious is inadequate provision of low-cost rented accommodation throughout our country. This has led to overcrowding, the costly and wasteful use of bed and breakfast accommodation, and in some cases, homelessness. This government has a commitment to decent housing at affordable rents, because we believe that overcrowding and homelessness on a scale we have seen are intolerable in a civilised society. Building and repairing homes will answer a pressing social need, and it will offer opportunities for skilled and productive employment. I can therefore announce the first step in a practical and measured programme to phase the release of capital receipts. Local authorities will have borrowing consents for an additional £900 million, £200 million this year, £700 million next year, for building new houses and for repairing their existing stock. The detailed proposals for England, together with measures specific to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, will be announced by the relevant Secretaries of State. Now, for most people, the acquisition of a house is the biggest single investment they will make. Homeowners rightly expect their investment to be protected by sensible policies pursued by government. I am determined that as a country, we never return to the instability, the speculation, the negative equity that characterised the housing market in the 1980s and the 1990s. Volatility is damaging both to the housing market and to the economy as a whole. So stability will be central to our policy to help homeowners, and we must be prepared to take the action necessary to secure it. I will not allow house prices to get out of control and put at risk the sustainability of the recovery. I have therefore decided it is right to take two measures aimed at stability in the housing market. First, I will raise stamp duty from 1% to 1.5% on property sales above £250,000, and to 2% for property sales above £500,000. This will take immediate effect. after the budget resolution has been voted by the House. And secondly, continuing the reforms begun by the previous government, which removed mortgage tax relief at the higher rate of 40% in 1991 and then cut it to 15% by 1995, I propose to reduce mortgage tax relief by a further 5% from 15% to 10% from April 1998. The timing of my measure should help to avoid a return to the conditions of the 1980s, where failure to take early action guaranteed there were worse problems later on. I believe that these measures will help to ensure what we all want, a more balanced recovery. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, our reform of the welfare state and the programme to move the unemployed from welfare to work is funded by a new and a one-off windfall tax on the excess profits of the privatised utilities. This tax, I can tell the House, will apply to companies privatised by flotation and subject to economic regulation under the specified Acts of Parliament. In determining the details of the tax, I believe I have struck a fair balance between recognising the position of utilities today and their undervaluation and under-regulation at the time of privatisation. The windfall tax will be related to the excessively high profits made under the initial regime. A company's tax bill will be based on the difference between the value that was placed on it at privatisation and a more realistic market valuation based on its after-tax profits for up to the first 4 full accounting years following privatisation. In preparing the windfall tax, we look more broadly at the position of the affected companies. As a result of my earlier announcement, justified on its own merits to reduce the gas levy to zero, I am satisfied that no company faces an unduly heavy tax burden. The windfall tax will raise some £2.1 billion from the electricity sector, around £1.65 billion from the water sector, and some £1.45 billion from the remaining companies. After taking the reduction in the gas levy into account, which will cost the government £400 million over the next 3 years, the net effect of the gas levy and the windfall tax together will raise £4.8 billion. After consulting the regulators, it is my judgment that the tax can be paid without any impact on prices, investment, or the quality of service to customers. Or in my view, on employment. In recent weeks, many companies have asked to pay the tax in instalments. I have now agreed that this shall be the case. It will be a one-off tax payable in 2 instalments, the first instalment on December the 1st, 1997, the second a year later. Full details of how the windfall tax will apply and the companies who will pay it will be set out in an Inland Revenue press release available at the conclusion of this statement. Now, based on the fiscal tightening I have now announced today, I can give full details of our 5-year deficit reduction plan. This deficit reduction plan is aimed at reducing the structural budget deficit. It is made possible by a long-term commitment on our part to financial discipline. It takes into account the uncertainties and risks involved in and forecasting the economic cycle. It is underpinned by our comprehensive review of the way government spends its money. And it matches rigour today with a long-term commitment to prudent and sustainable public finances. In January this year, I announced that we would adhere for 2 years to the agreed control totals for public spending. That commitment is reaffirmed today and integral to the budget statement. I announced there would be no spending round this year, nor will there be. Departments are working within already announced departmental spending totals to reorder spending from low priority to high priority areas. I am pleased to report that they are not only identifying waste and inefficiencies in existing spending, but they are now redistributing these savings to the long-term priorities of this government, not the last. So the figures I can now give for my deficit reduction plan exclude windfall tax revenues. Borrowing was projected in the last budget to be £19.25 billion this year. It is now set to be £13.25 billion. Borrowing that was projected to be £12.25 billion next year is now set to be £5.5 billion. So our deficit reduction plan ensures that borrowing, which was £22.75 billion last year, is now set to fall to £5.5 billion next year. And beyond these years, I am publishing today a range of projections based on different assumptions for spending. And in every case for these next 3 years, we meet the golden rule, we see debt falling as a proportion of national income, and because of our discipline and the measures we have taken, we go below the borrowing projections of the previous government. And for this year and for the foreseeable future, we are comfortably within the Maastricht criteria for levels of debt and borrowing. Tough and prudent management is our watchword in what will continue to be a thoroughly disciplined approach to the public finances. The comprehensive spending review will determine overall priorities for the early decades of the next century. In the case of the National Health Service, the first stage of our cuts in bureaucracy are being implemented this year. By next spring, the first conclusions from the strategic review of London hospitals will be implemented. We will act to improve the organisation of services, including merging National Health Service trusts. By dismantling the inefficient internal market, we will no longer have to spend money promoting competition and servicing innumerable short-term contracts and the administration that goes with them, all at the expense of patient care. That will now change. And because we have reinvigorated the private finance initiative, we will shortly announce a new house-building programme across the country. We will also act to recoup in full the cost of treating road traffic accidents from insurance companies. And this, like the action we are taking against prescription fraud, shows our determination to ensure that National Health Service resources are focused on frontline patient care. In normal circumstances, the £5 billion reserved for 1998-1999 would be distributed during the annual autumn spending round, with the allocations announced at the time of the November budget. There is no spending round this autumn, and there will be no budget until next spring. I propose that the majority of the reserve be retained for contingencies that may arise in the coming year. But now that the long-term changes are underway, I want the National Health Service to be able to plan also for the year ahead. I want them to do so in the sure knowledge of a prudent and realistic allocation for 1998-1999, which will ensure that services are maintained and patient care is secure. Yeah. The long-term plans we have agreed mean that we are now sure the money will go where it is needed, direct to patient care. So I have decided to allocate from the reserve to the National Health Service for 1998-1999 a sum of £1.2 billion. This, Mr. Deputy Speaker, does more than meet our commitment to the people of this country for a real-term increase in resources. Health spending will now rise by 5%, 2.25% in real terms, the same as our projection for the trend growth rate of the economy as a whole. The public rightly wants to see more money put into the National Health Service. Yeah. but it wants the money to go directly to patient care. So this money is being granted on the firm agreement that the administrative reforms we propose for the health service be fully implemented and that frontline patient care will benefit. Education is our country's priority. It holds the key to our future. The government must be satisfied that resources in education are going direct to learning in our classroom. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education and Employment, and ministers in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will bring forward proposals so that every school can meet standards for results and discipline. We will ensure that schools and local education authorities meet targets for raising standards in their areas. They must demonstrate that money is being spent improving the quality of pupils' education. For next year, while we review the future arrangements for local authority finance, capping will remain in place. But I propose to allocate from the reserve for next year, and specifically for use in schools, an additional £1 billion to education. The details The details will be announced by the Secretary of State for Education and Employment, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Mr. Deputy Speaker, traditionally these announcements of revenue and allocations would complete a budget. But I have one more announcement to make. The windfall tax will finance our measures for employment and training. But there is nothing more important to the training of young people than what happens in our schools. Indeed, many of the problems our Welfare to Work programme must now address start in our schools. We cannot run a first-rate economy on the basis of second-rate education. Economic success tomorrow will depend on investing in our schools today. But at the present rate of progress, many of our children will be educated for the 21st century in classrooms built in the 19th. Today, 1 million pupils are being educated in classrooms built before the First World War. If our schools are to educate for the needs of the 21st century economy, they must themselves become schools fit to learn in and equipped for the 21st century. By encouraging schools to engage in public-private partnerships, any public investment we make can lever in even more resources to renovate our schools. And I want schools not just to repair the roofs and the fabric, but to acquire the modern equipment and the computers they need. So I have decided to allocate cash from the remaining proceeds of the windfall tax for an immediate programme of capital investment to equip our schools with the infrastructure, the technology and the bright modern classrooms they need. My honourable friend, the Paymaster General and the Ministers for Education will invite schools to submit plans showing how they propose to upgrade, modernise and become schools fit for the 21st century. The details will be announced in due course. I therefore propose to make available £1.3 billion over the course of the Parliament. Representing a capital investment that averages almost £150 for every pupil in this country. Taken together with the extra year-to-year expenditure I have just announced, this budget allocates £2.3 billion in new resources for our schools. With this increase in educational investment, we are taking the first step towards delivering our manifesto commitment to increase the proportion of national income spent on education. In education, as in every other area, we are honouring our pledges to the British people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the measures I have announced today for stability, for investment, for employment opportunity for all, and for education will make Britain better equipped and more ready to face the future with confidence. Previous budgets pursued the short-term interests of the few. This budget advances the long-term interests of the many. This is a budget equipping Britain for the future, meeting the people's priorities, a people's budget for Britain's future, and I commend it to the House and to the country.
Under Standing Order number 51, the first motion, entitled Provisional Collection of Taxes, must be decided without debate. Will the Chancellor of the Exchequer please move formally?
Move formally.
The question is that pursuant to Section 5 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1968, provisional statutory effect should be given to the following motion. Hydrocarbon oil, rates of duties and rebates, motion number 7. As many of that opinion say aye, the contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I shall now call upon the Chancellor of the Exchequer to move the next motion on the green paper. It is on that motion that the debate will take place today and on the succeeding days. The remaining motions will not be put until the end of the budget debate next week, and they will then be decided without debate. Will the Chancellor please move the next motion?
Formally.
The question is that provision be made for imposing a tax on the amount of the windfall from which a company was benefiting on 2nd July 1997 in any case where A, an undertaking whose privatisation involved the imposition of economic regulation has been privatised by means of a flotation, and B, the profits of the undertaking in the period after the flotation show that the company was benefiting on that date from a windfall from that flotation. The question is the motion that I have just read out. As many of that opinion say aye. Right, that is the motion that is proposed. Mr. William Hay.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, on a personal level, may I congratulate the Chancellor on his fortitude in delivering his speech and in doing so within the space of 1 hour with only the assistance of water. I could congratulate him more enthusiastically if all of the contents of this budget had been delivered to Parliament first, as we discussed in this House earlier today. We were told by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the House earlier this afternoon that it had all been speculation, what was printed in the Financial Times today. Remarkable, wasn't it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the Chancellor opened his speech by saying that he had a 5-year deficit reduction plan, and the headline of the Financial Times today was, "Budget will cut deficit over 5 years." Extraordinary. Extraordinary that there was such speculation and that it turned out to be so well-founded. Extraordinary, too, that the speculation referred to the abolition of the dividend tax credit, and that is exactly what the Chancellor has announced in the course of his budget speech. They must be remarkable journalists at the Financial Times who not only dreamt that a senior member of the government had told them something, but dreamt exactly accurately what that senior member of the government might have told them. It is extraordinary, in the view of the opposition, that government sources revealed those measures in advance. And it is to be hoped that the government will now come to realise that budget leaks can affect the movements of billions of pounds and the savings of millions of people. They should have a thorough investigation, and they should report that investigation to the House. The Chancellor also opened his speech by saying that he would be bound by strict rules which he would adopt for the rest of this Parliament. We could be forgiven for noting that all Labour governments have started with strict rules which were going to bind themselves throughout their Parliament, and all have ended up abandoning them. There are some things in this budget which we will certainly welcome. The cut in taxation for small companies is most certainly one of them. There are some things at which we will need to look at the details as our debates on these matters become clear. But one thing is very clear about the budget. When the Prime Minister said before the election, and I quote, "We've no plans to increase tax at all," he did not mean a word of it. That is clear. Because this is a tax-raising budget. When the Chancellor says he is tightening fiscal policy by £5.75 billion, he means he is introducing a tax-raising budget. And the changes to advanced corporation tax, the changes to MIRAS, amount to tax rises which the Labour Party denied they would introduce before the general election. Not only did the Prime Minister say on the 21st of September last year, "We've no plans to increase tax at all," he said on the 2nd of August, "Our proposals do not involve raising taxes. If we have any such proposals, we will make them clear before the next election." Why were these proposals not made clear before that general election? He said on the 8th of January this year, "The programme of the Labour Party does not imply any tax increases at all." If that were true, why have these tax increases been announced today? Of course we can be relaxed about some things. Things like 2% on stamp duty for houses worth over £500,000 will only be of concern to a small number of rich people like the Prime Minister. Many people can relax about that. But other people are going to have to pay for the Labour Party breaking its election promises in this budget. The changes to MIRAS will add to insecurity, destroy confidence in the housing market, and make people much more wary of buying and selling homes. Those are not my words, they are the words of the Prime Minister a year ago, who said that restrictions to MIRAS would add to insecurity, destroy confidence in the market, and make people much more wary of buying and selling homes. Can he honestly say that he gave the country an accurate reflection of what he would do on this subject if and when he came to power? Honourable members opposite have never been in sympathy with home ownership, and they are clearly not going to start being in sympathy with home ownership today. So this is a budget in which the government have broken a central election promise, in which they have tried to comfort their supporters by saying that there will be a £1.2 billion increase in health service spending. Last year there was a £1.6 billion increase in health service spending. And as we look at the budget of this administration and future budgets, we must always remember that rarely, if ever, has a government had such cause to be grateful to its predecessor for the state of the economy it has inherited. The last government, and my right honourable friend, the member for Rushcliffe in particular as Chancellor, left the economy thriving. And honourable members opposite should note that the man who said that the right honourable member for Rushcliffe left the economy thriving was Lord Healey on The World at One this afternoon. Every serious commentator agrees. We have bequeathed to this government the strongest set of economic circumstances within the lifetime of my generation. The longest period of sustained low inflation for 50 years, the lowest mortgage rates for 30 years, the lowest taxes of any major European country, which they have now begun to increase, the lowest unemployment of any major European country, the best record on job creation, the highest sustained growth of any major European economy. These were not accidents of the economic cycle, they were a direct result of the policies pursued by Conservative governments, which were obstructed, denigrated and opposed by honourable members opposite. The World Economic Forum has described Britain as the envy of continental Europe, with an economy reborn out of sweeping privatisation, deregulation and other structural reforms that is now well poised to compete in the global economy. That is the truth about the British economy today, and we will hold the government to account for their stewardship of that unrivalled inheritance. Central to this budget, as the Chancellor has made clear, is the so-called windfall tax. In last year's budget debate, the current Chancellor declared, the windfall tax is not a tax on ordinary families. That would be true, of course, if ordinary families didn't pay bills for gas, electricity, water or the telephone, if ordinary families didn't own shares, if ordinary families didn't invest in pension schemes. If all these things were true, then I suppose the right honourable gentleman would be right. He has said in his budget speech that it will have no impact at all on prices, investment or anything else that he could care to mention. He is looking for a free lunch from the windfall tax, and he will find it is not available. He should make clear in this budget debate that pensioners should be compensated for any increase in their fuel bills. He should make clear whether low-income families will receive an increase in income support to cover the extra costs. And I know he would like to think that the windfall tax will be paid by businesses but not by individuals. But the Chancellor is well read. He must have read the standard work on tax, the British tax system, which declares there is no such thing as a tax on firms. The effective incidence of all taxes is ultimately on individuals. Surely he agrees with that. Surely he agrees with that. The author is Professor John Kay, business guru to the Prime Minister himself. And the right honourable gentleman would like to think that the windfall tax will be paid by so-called fat cats, by striped-shirted speculators in the city, but it won't. Any such people sold up and took their money long ago. It is current shareholders who will foot the bill. Far from taxing excess profits, the government is taxing those people who are now unlucky enough to be holding the parcel when the music stops. The right honourable gentleman, the Chancellor, says he wants to put fairness back into the tax system. But what is fair about taxing people on a windfall that someone else made in the past? Millions of utility shares are held by ordinary men and women through pension funds and insurance policies. So anyone with a pension, anyone with an insurance policy, anyone who is working hard to build up a nest egg for the future will be hit by the windfall tax. It is a savings tax by another name. He has claimed that it has already been discounted by the city. Up to a point it has. But that means that the prospect of billions of pounds of extra tax has already done lasting damage to the shares in which millions of people have invested for the future. He has made much of the electoral mandate that the government claimed for the windfall tax. But few people can have forgotten the outrage from Labour spokesmen and spin doctors in the general election when we exposed the £1.5 billion privatisation black hole in the Labour Party's finances, which with these taxes he is now seeking to fill. There's no black hole for the Labour Party, said the Chancellor in the general election. Labour had changed. They too would embark on a programme of privatisation. We'll privatise everything, the Sunday Telegraph was told. Where have those measures been in the budget today? Sure enough, as we predicted, some of the tax rises in this budget have had to be brought out to fill the £1.5 billion black hole, which indeed was there in their plans. Well, he may have filled the black hole in his finances, but I have to tell him he has blown a new black hole in the credibility of the Labour Party. His next tax increase was the change to dividend tax credits, advanced corporation tax, on the grounds that if you do something which people don't understand very well, they won't notice it and you'll get away with it. But for many people, their pension is the single biggest saving they will ever build up. And every word we heard today about advanced corporation tax was another hammer blow against pensions and savings, another savings tax from this government. Pensions are one of our great success stories. The UK has built up over £650 billion in pension funds, more than the rest of the European Union put together. We understand why the Chancellor has gone for ACT. It is one of the most complicated taxes known to man. It is a tax strategy that halves the blame for him but doubles the pain for everyone else. This change means pension funds will be able to claim less tax back. So their revenue will be lower, their growth will be lower, pensions will be smaller, and pensioners will be worse off. Taken together with the damage from the windfall tax, it is clear that this budget delivers a double whammy against pensions. The bills for the decisions announced today will be paid by millions of hard-working people many years down the line. It is a smash-and-grab raid on pension funds in this country, and it is a cynical betrayal of the millions who have built up pensions and now see them devalued. I welcome his assurance about how charities will be affected by the changes to ACT. But how will these changes interact with the new minimum funding requirements for pension funds? What impact will they have on investment? He says it will help investment. But if businesses have to dip into their funds to top up company pension schemes, they may end up cutting back on the very investment that the government wants to encourage. He will regret the measure that he has announced on ACT, his attempt at hiding his tax increases today. He is using some of that money to reduce VAT on fuel, but can he confirm in the course of this debate that his timing of this measure means that the reduction in VAT will feed through into smaller rises in the state pension, so that he can claw back from pensioners some of what he